Emily Carter stood outside the Grand Crescent Hotel ballroom with her hands clenched so tightly her nails pressed into her skin. Soft piano music echoed behind the closed golden doors, while wealthy guests laughed inside like life was perfect. But Emily felt trapped. Every crystal chandelier inside that ballroom reminded her of one thing. Her mother controlled everything. Vivian Carter was one of the most respected women in Chicago. Powerful, elegant, feared. And tonight, she planned to announce Emily's engagement to Daniel Brooks in front of half the city. Emily did not love Daniel. Daniel loved business deals, status, money, and the Carter family name. That was enough for Vivian. Emily closed her eyes and took a slow breath. She remembered the conversation from the night before, like it was still happening. "You will marry Daniel next month," Vivian had said while calmly sipping wine in their penthouse apartment. Emily stared at her in disbelief. "You already planned my future, without asking me." Vivian looked up coldly. "I built this family from nothing. You will not destroy our reputation because of emotions." "I don't love him." Vivian laughed quietly. "Love is temporary, power lasts forever." Emily's chest tightened painfully. For years, she obeyed her mother. The perfect daughter, the perfect smile, the perfect public image. But inside, she felt empty. When Emily was a child, her father used to protect her from Vivian's harshness. But after his death, Vivian became even colder. Emily still remembered crying after failing a school competition at 13 years old. Vivian had looked at her with disappointment and said, "Second place means you lost." Nothing Emily ever did felt enough, and now her mother wanted to sell her future like another business contract. Emily opened her eyes and looked toward the ballroom doors again. She could still walk inside, smile for the cameras, pretend to be happy, but something inside her finally broke. Without another thought, she turned and walked away from the hotel. Rain covered the Chicago streets as she stepped onto the sidewalk. Cold wind pushed against her hair while expensive cars rushed past. Her phone vibrated again. Mother calling. Emily ignored it. For the first time in her life, she did not care what Vivian wanted. She walked for nearly 20 minutes before stopping outside a small coffee shop downtown. The warm lights inside looked peaceful compared to the world she came from. Emily entered quietly. The cafe smelled like coffee and cinnamon. A few people sat working on laptops while soft music played in the background. Then she noticed him. A tall man sat alone near the window, helping a little girl color in a notebook. He wore a dark gray sweater and looked exhausted. Not weak, just tired in a way that came from carrying too much responsibility. The little girl suddenly laughed loudly after drawing something messy with crayons. The man smiled gently at her and, for some reason, Emily stopped walking. The little girl looked around 7 years old with curly brown hair and bright eyes full of life. "Daddy, look," she said proudly while holding up her drawing. The man smiled softly. "That's amazing, Lily." Emily stared at them longer than she expected. There was something honest about the moment. Something real, not fake, like the world she knew. Before she could stop herself, she walked toward their table. The man looked up carefully when she approached. "Can I help you?" Emily surprised herself with the next words, "I need to marry someone." The man blinked slowly. "I'm sorry, what?" The little girl giggled. "Daddy, I think she's serious." Emily sat down across from him before fear could stop her. "My name is Emily Carter." Recognition flashed briefly across his face. Almost everyone in Chicago knew the Carter family. "I'm Michael Hayes," he replied calmly. Emily nodded once. "I know." Michael studied her carefully. "You're supposed to be at the Carter charity event tonight. I left." "Why?" "Because my mother planned my engagement without asking me." Michael leaned back slightly. "And your solution is marrying a stranger," Emily let out. a humorless laugh. When you say it out loud, it sounds insane. It is insane. Lily looked between them curiously while eating a cookie. Emily rubbed her temples tiredly. I just need freedom. Michael stayed quiet for several seconds. Then he surprised her. I understand. Emily looked up slowly. Michael glanced toward Lily before speaking again. My wife died 3 years ago. Emily's expression softened instantly. I'm sorry. After she passed away, everyone treated me differently. Business partners, friends, even family. His voice stayed calm, but Emily heard the pain underneath. Most people only see money when they look at me now. Not a person. Emily frowned slightly. Michael did not look rich. His clothes were simple. No expensive watch, no bodyguards. Nothing about him suggested wealth. Then Lily tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, can Emily stay with us? Michael sighed softly. Lily, what I like her. Emily almost smiled for the first time all night. Michael looked back at Emily. What exactly are you asking? Emily hesitated, because suddenly the idea felt real. Not just anger, not revenge. A decision that could change everything. I want my mother to lose control over my life. Michael folded his hands together thoughtfully. And how does marrying me help? She'll hate it. Michael raised an eyebrow. You don't even know me. I know you're kind to your daughter. That answer caught him off guard. The cafe became quiet again. Rain tapped softly against the windows while Lily continued coloring happily beside them. Finally, Michael spoke. I need help too. Emily looked confused. What kind of help? Michael exhaled slowly. Social services has been pressuring me lately. They think Lily needs more stability after losing her mother. Emily glanced toward Lily again. The little girl looked so innocent, so happy just sitting beside her father. They think a 2-parent home would help. Emily's eyes widened slightly. So you'd actually agree to this? Michael looked directly into her eyes. It would only be temporary. Emily nodded slowly. Temporary sounded safe. No emotions, no attachment, no expectations, just freedom before either of them could say more. The cafe door suddenly opened hard. Emily turned immediately. Vivian Carter stood there wearing an elegant white coat with anger burning across her face. The entire cafe fell silent. Emily, Vivian said sharply. What are you doing here? Emily slowly stood from her chair. For years that voice controlled her, terrified her, but tonight felt different. Vivian's eyes moved toward Michael and Lily with obvious judgment. Who are these people? Emily looked at Michael for 1 second. Then she did something that shocked even herself. She reached for Michael's hand. I'm getting married. The cafe became completely silent. Vivian stared at her like she had lost her mind. To him, Michael stood calmly beside Emily without pulling away. Vivian laughed coldly. This is pathetic. Emily's heart pounded, but she refused to step back. You wanted to control my future. Now you can't. Vivian lowered her voice dangerously. You are embarrassing this family. No, Mother. You embarrassed this family a long time ago. Vivian's expression hardened instantly. Michael finally spoke for the first time since Vivian entered. With respect, Emily is an adult. Her choices belong to her. Vivian looked him up and down dismissively. And who exactly are you? Michael Hayes. The name clearly meant nothing to her, which almost made Emily smile. Vivian stepped closer to Emily. You are throwing your entire future away for some stranger. Emily looked directly into her mother's eyes. For once, this is my decision. For several long seconds, neither woman moved. Then Vivian turned sharply and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she looked back once. If you do this, don't expect me to save you later. The cafe door slammed shut behind her. Emily finally released a shaky breath. Lily smiled brightly. "I think your mom is mean." Michael coughed slightly, trying not to laugh. Emily covered her face briefly with her hands. "I cannot believe I just did that." Michael looked thoughtful for a moment. Then he quietly said something unexpected. "You don't have to go back." Emily looked at him slowly, and for the first time in years, someone's words felt safe. 3 days later, Emily stood inside a quiet Chicago courthouse wearing a simple cream-colored dress. No reporters, no giant ballroom, no wealthy guests, just her Michael Lily, and an old judge reading marriage vows calmly. Emily glanced toward Michael during the ceremony. He looked serious, steady, protective. Not once had he pressured her. Not once had he treated her like property. When the judge announced them husband and wife, Lily clapped excitedly. "We're a family now." Emily's chest tightened unexpectedly at those words. Family. She was not sure she even understood what that truly meant anymore. Outside, the courthouse snow lightly covered the streets of Chicago. Michael opened the car door for her politely as Emily stepped. Inside, she looked back one last time. Part of her felt terrified. Another part felt free. She thought she had just married an ordinary single father to ruin her mother's plans. But Emily Carter had no idea who Michael Hayes truly was, and she definitely had no idea how dangerous the truth would become. Emily Carter stood frozen near the ballroom balcony while the words echoed repeatedly inside her mind. Michael still doesn't know Vivian caused his wife's accident. The laughter and music around her suddenly felt distant. Her breathing became uneven as she slowly turned toward her mother. Vivian Carter's expression had completely changed. For the first time, Emily saw real fear in her mother's eyes. Not anger, not control. Fear. Vivian immediately grabbed Emily's wrist tightly and pulled her away from the crowd. "Do not create a scene!" Emily yanked her arm back. "What did they mean?" Vivian lowered her voice sharply. "You need to stop asking dangerous questions. Dangerous questions." Emily stared at her in disbelief. "They said you caused Olivia Hayes' accident." Vivian's jaw tightened instantly. "People in this city gossip about everything." "That wasn't gossip, Mother." "You look terrified." Vivian glanced around the ballroom carefully. Before speaking again, "You don't understand the kind of people involved in Michael's world." Emily crossed her arms angrily. "Then explain it to me." But before Vivian could answer, Michael returned. His calm blue eyes moved between both, women immediately sensing tension. "Is everything all right?" Vivian forced a smile so quickly it almost looked painful. "Of course." Emily noticed Michael studying her face carefully. He could tell something was wrong, but she could not tell him here. Not in front of hundreds of wealthy guests and reporters, Michael gently placed a hand against the middle of Emily's back. "We're about to start dinner." Emily nodded silently while trying to hide the panic inside her chest. The rest of the evening passed like a blur. Businessmen surrounded Michael, constantly asking questions about investments and new projects. Everywhere he walked, people moved aside respectfully. Emily quietly watched him from across the ballroom. He carried power effortlessly, not loudly like Vivian. Michael never raised his voice, never demanded attention. Yet somehow everyone listened to him anyway. That difference fascinated her. Vivian controlled people through fear. Michael controlled rooms through presence alone. At one point, Lily suddenly ran into the ballroom wearing tiny sparkly shoes and a fluffy white coat. A nanny hurried behind her nervously. "Miss Lily, slow down, please." Lily ignored her completely and rushed straight toward Emily. "Mommy, Emily." Several nearby guests immediately turned in surprise at the nickname. Emily knelt slightly as Lily wrapped her arms around her neck. Michael looked embarrassed for half a second. "You were supposed to stay upstairs." Lily smiled. proudly. "But I wanted to see you." Then she looked at Emily seriously. "And Daddy misses you when you leave the room." Michael nearly choked on his drink while several guests laughed quietly nearby. Emily tried not to smile. For the first time all night, the tension in her chest eased. Slightly. Lily had a strange way of making everything feel lighter. Later during dinner, Emily finally sat beside Michael at the long, candlelit table. Chicago's richest families filled the ballroom. Around them, elegant dresses, diamond jewelry, fake smiles. Emily spent her entire life around people like this. Tonight, they suddenly felt exhausting. Michael leaned slightly closer while cutting his steak. "You've been quiet." Emily hesitated. Part of her wanted to tell him everything immediately, but another part feared what the truth could destroy. Instead, she asked carefully, "How did your wife die?" Michael's hand stopped moving instantly. The warmth in his eyes faded slightly. "Car accident." Emily swallowed slowly. 3 years ago." "Yes. I'm sorry." Michael nodded once before looking down at his glass. For several seconds he said nothing, then quietly he added, "Olivia was driving home from a charity meeting downtown. Her brakes failed near Lakeshore Drive." Emily's stomach twisted painfully. Brakes failed. Suddenly those whispered words on the balcony felt even more terrifying. Michael continued speaking calmly, though sadness remained clear in his voice. "The police ruled it an accident, but something about it never felt right." Emily looked at him carefully. "You think someone caused it?" Michael stared across the ballroom thoughtfully. "I spent years investigating quietly, but I never found proof." Emily's heart pounded harder, because deep down she feared her mother knew more than anyone realized. Before she could speak again, a tall businessman approached their table, smiling nervously. "Mr. Hayes, the mayor is asking for you." Michael sighed softly before standing. "Excuse me for a moment." Emily nodded silently. The moment he walked away, Vivian suddenly appeared beside her chair again. "You need to leave this marriage." Emily looked up coldly. "Why?" Vivian leaned closer. "Because Michael Hayes destroys people." Emily laughed bitterly. "That sounds familiar coming from you." Vivian's expression hardened instantly. "You think marrying a billionaire protects you? It doesn't." Emily stood slowly from her chair. "At least Michael treats me like a human being." That sentence hit harder than Emily expected. For a brief second, something emotional flashed across Vivian's face. Regret, maybe, but it disappeared quickly. "You are too emotional to survive in this city." Emily. "No, Mother, I'm just not heartless like you." Vivian stepped closer, lowering her voice again. "If Michael discovers certain things, your life will collapse with mine." Emily stared at her. In confusion, what does that mean? Vivian looked toward Michael across the ballroom, speaking with politicians near the stage. Then she whispered quietly, "Some secrets destroy entire families." Before Emily could stop her, Vivian turned and disappeared into the crowd. Emily stood there shaken. Nothing her mother said ever sounded simple anymore. Every word felt like part of something darker, hidden beneath the surface. An hour later, the gala finally ended. Snow covered downtown Chicago. As reporters crowded outside the ballroom entrance again, Michael helped Emily into the SUV before climbing inside beside her. For several minutes, neither spoke while the city lights passed outside the windows. Finally, Michael looked toward her, calmly. "My daughter likes you." Emily smiled faintly. "She's impossible not to love." A softness appeared briefly in Michael's expression at the mention of Lily. "She hasn't connected with anyone since Olivia died." Emily glanced toward him carefully. "You really loved your wife." Michael looked out the window quietly. She was the best person I ever knew. There was no hesitation in his answer. No performance, just truth. And strangely, that honesty made Emily trust him more. Back at the mansion, Lily had already fallen asleep upstairs. The house felt quiet compared to the chaos of the gala. Emily slowly removed her heels near the staircase while exhaustion settled into her body. Michael loosened his tie slightly. "You should get some rest." Emily nodded, but before walking upstairs, she stopped suddenly. "Michael?" He looked toward her. Emily hesitated before asking the question carefully. "If someone had hurt Olivia intentionally, would you want to—" "No." Michael's expression became unreadable instantly. "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. Emily felt fear crawl through her chest again, because now she knew one thing for certain. If the truth about Vivian Carter ever surfaced, nothing in their lives would remain the same. Not her marriage, not Michael's world, not even Lily's future. And somewhere deep inside, Emily realized her revenge against her mother had accidentally placed her directly inside a dangerous secret connected to Olivia Hayes' death. A secret powerful enough to destroy everyone involved. Emily Carter barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the whispered sentence again. "Michael still doesn't know Vivian caused his wife's accident." By morning, her chest felt heavy with anxiety. Sunlight slowly entered the enormous bedroom while snow continued falling outside the mansion windows. Emily sat quietly on the edge of the bed staring at her phone. Part of her wanted to confront Vivian immediately. Another part feared the answer. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Before she could respond, Lily pushed the door open carrying a tray with toast and orange juice. "Breakfast delivery." Emily blinked in surprise. "You made this?" Lily grinned proudly. "Well, the chef helped a little." Emily laughed softly. For the first time that morning, Lily carefully climbed onto the bed beside her. "You look sad again." Emily brushed hair away from Lily's face gently. "Just tired, sweetheart." Lily studied her seriously in the innocent way children sometimes did. "Daddy gets quiet when he's hurting too." That simple sentence hit Emily harder than expected. Even Lily could still see Michael's pain after all these years. The little girl suddenly smiled brightly. "But he smiles more when you're here." Emily looked away for a second, trying to hide the emotion in her eyes. She never planned to care about this family. Now she could not imagine hurting them. Downstairs. Michael stood in the kitchen, speaking on the phone, while reviewing business files. Even in a simple black sweater, he carried quiet authority. The moment he noticed Emily, he ended the call. "Did Lily wake you too early?" "She brought me breakfast." Michael sighed softly. "She's been trying to become independent lately." Lily crossed her arms proudly. "I'm already independent." Michael almost smiled. Emily watched the interaction carefully. This was not the cold, billionaire image Chicago newspapers described. This was simply a father trying his best to hold his world together. After breakfast, Michael prepared to leave for meetings downtown. Before walking out, he paused near Emily. "There's a charity foundation event tonight if you'd like to come." Emily hesitated. Another public appearance sounded exhausting, but spending the night alone with her thoughts sounded worse. "I'll go." Michael nodded once. "I'll have someone help you prepare." After he left, Emily walked slowly through the mansion, trying to clear her mind. But everywhere she looked, she saw reminders of Olivia Hayes. Family photographs lined several hallway tables. In every picture, Olivia looked warm and kind, the opposite of Vivian Carter. One photo especially caught Emily's attention. Michael stood beside Olivia holding baby Lily while all three laughed together near Lake Michigan. The happiness in Michael's eyes looked completely different back then. Lighter Emily swallowed hard. Someone had destroyed that happiness, and her mother might be responsible. Hours later, Emily finally could not handle the uncertainty anymore. She drove alone into downtown Chicago and headed toward Vivian's penthouse apartment. The moment the elevator doors opened, she saw her mother standing. Near the massive windows overlooking the city, Vivian did not look surprised to see her. I wondered how long it would take. Emily walked inside slowly. Tell me the truth. Vivian calmly set down her wine glass. There are many truths, Emily. Did you have anything to do with Olivia Hayes's accident? Silence filled the penthouse immediately. Vivian looked away toward the skyline for several seconds before speaking. Olivia involved herself in matters that did not concern her. Emily's stomach twisted. That's not an answer. Vivian finally turned toward her. Michael Hayes was expanding his company years ago. There was a downtown property both families wanted. Emily frowned. What does that have to do with Olivia? She discovered financial documents connected to one of my business partners. Emily stepped closer. What kind of documents? Vivian's expression darkened slightly. Documents that could destroy everything I built. Emily felt cold fear spread through her body. So what happened? Vivian's voice lowered carefully. I told my associates to scare her. Nothing more. Emily stared in disbelief. What does that mean? They were supposed to pressure her into staying silent. And the accident? Vivian suddenly looked angry. I never ordered anyone to kill Olivia. Emily's breathing became uneven. But someone did. Vivian looked away again without answering. That silence felt more terrifying than any confession. Emily stepped backwards slowly. Oh my God. Vivian quickly walked toward her. You need to listen carefully now. Emily shook her head in horror. Michael can never know about this. You think I'm going to protect you? Vivian grabbed her arm tightly. If Michael discovers my connection, he will destroy everyone attached to me, including you. Emily pulled away immediately. I'm nothing like you. Vivian's face hardened instantly. You carry my name, that alone is enough. Emily suddenly realized something painful. For years, she blamed herself for never pleasing Vivian. But the truth was much darker. Vivian only cared about power. Even now, she feared losing influence more than losing her. Daughter Emily turned toward the door. Stay away from me. Vivian's voice, followed behind her coldly, You think Michael Hayes is a hero? You have no idea what powerful men are capable of? Emily left without another word. By evening, heavy, snow-covered Chicago streets again. The Charity Foundation event took place inside a luxury art museum downtown. Michael greeted politicians and investors calmly while cameras flashed around him. Emily stood beside him wearing a dark blue gown, but her mind remained trapped inside Vivian's confession. Michael noticed her distraction almost immediately. You're somewhere else tonight. Emily forced a small smile. Just tired. Michael studied her carefully, but did not pressure further. Later during the event, Emily wandered alone through a quieter museum hallway lined with modern paintings. That was when she overheard two older businessmen speaking nearby. You think Vivian will survive the investigation? Not if Hayes uncovers the truth. Emily froze instantly. The second man lowered his voice. Michael's investigators reopened Olivia's case last month. Her heart nearly stopped. Michael was still searching for answers. And if he discovered Vivian's connection, himself, everything would explode. Emily stepped away quickly before they noticed her listening. But as she turned the corner, she nearly collided directly into Michael. He steadied her gently with both hands. Hey, what happened? Emily looked into his eyes and suddenly felt overwhelmed by guilt. He trusted her. Meanwhile, she was hiding secrets connected to his wife's death. Michael frowned slightly. You're shaking. Emily tried to speak normally. "I just need air." Without hesitation, Michael guided her toward a private balcony overlooking snowy Chicago lights. Cold wind surrounded them as silence settled between them. Finally, Michael spoke quietly. "You don't have to pretend around me, Emily." Those words almost broke her. Completely. Because pretending was exactly what she was doing. Michael leaned against the balcony railing, looking out across the city. "When Olivia died, I stopped trusting people." Emily stayed silent, listening carefully. "But lately, this house feels alive again." He looked toward her softly. "Lily laughs more. I laugh more." Emily's chest tightened painfully. Michael continued quietly, "And somehow you became part of that." Tears filled Emily's eyes unexpectedly, because for the first time in years, someone genuinely valued her presence. Not her last name, not status, not business advantages. Her Michael noticed the tears immediately. "Emily." Before he could ask another question, she suddenly stepped forward and hugged him tightly. Michael froze briefly in surprise, then slowly, his arms wrapped around her protectively. For several quiet seconds, neither moved while snow fell around them, and in that moment, Emily realized something terrifying. This marriage was no longer just revenge. She was falling in love with him, which meant the truth about Vivian Carter could destroy far more than a fake arrangement. It could destroy the only real family Emily had ever known. Emily Carter could still feel Michael's arms around her long after they returned from the charity event. That moment on the snowy balcony changed something between them. The marriage no longer felt fake, and that terrified her, because every second she stayed close to Michael Hayes made the truth more dangerous. The next morning, Emily woke early after another restless night. Chicago's skyline glowed softly outside the mansion windows while silence filled the house. She walked downstairs barefoot, hoping coffee might calm her thoughts. Instead, she found Michael already awake in his office. Stacks of documents covered his desk, while several computer screens displayed financial reports and old newspaper articles. Michael looked exhausted. He glanced up when Emily entered. "You're awake early." "So are you." Michael leaned back in his chair, rubbing tired eyes. "Couldn't sleep." Emily stepped closer slowly. "What are you working on?" For a moment he hesitated, then he turned one screen, slightly toward her. An old newspaper headline appeared: "Chicago philanthropist Olivia Hayes dies in tragic car accident." Emily's stomach tightened instantly. Michael watched her expression carefully. "I hired investigators again." Her heartbeat quickened. "You reopened the case?" "Yes." Emily struggled to keep her voice steady. "Why now?" Michael looked down at the article quietly. "Because something has never felt right." The room suddenly felt too small. Emily sat slowly across from him, trying to hide the panic in her chest. Michael continued speaking calmly, though pain remained visible in his eyes. Olivia was careful. "Smart, she checked everything." He paused briefly. "The police said her brakes failed because of weather damage, but Olivia had just serviced that car 3 days earlier." Emily lowered her eyes immediately. Michael noticed. "You know something, don't you?" The question hit her like ice water. Emily looked back up quickly. "No." Michael studied her face for several long seconds. He clearly sensed something. But before he could press further, Lily suddenly ran into the office wearing pajamas and holding a stuffed rabbit. "Daddy the chef burned my pancakes." Michael blinked once before laughing softly. "That sounds serious." Lily climbed into Emily's lap without hesitation. "You have to save breakfast." Emily hugged her automatically, and suddenly guilt crashed into her chest again. This little girl trusted her completely. Meanwhile, Emily carried secrets connected to Lily's mother's death. Later that afternoon, Vivian Carter unexpectedly arrived at the mansion again. The atmosphere changed instantly the moment she entered. Even the staff looked uncomfortable around her. Vivian stood elegantly, in a dark designer coat while snow melted softly around her heels. "I need to speak with my daughter." Michael remained calm near the staircase. "You can speak here?" Vivian's expression hardened slightly. "This is private." Emily stepped forward before tension worsened. "It's fine, Michael." Michael looked at her carefully before finally nodding once and walking toward his office. The second he disappeared, Vivian grabbed Emily's arm sharply. "You need to stop Michael's investigation." Emily pulled away immediately. "You're unbelievable." Vivian lowered her voice angrily. "If he keeps searching, people will start talking." "They're already talking." Vivian's face paled slightly at that. Emily crossed her arms. "Tell me the truth for once in your life." Vivian looked toward the office hallway nervously before speaking. "Years ago, one of my business partners handled problems for powerful clients." Emily felt cold fear rise again. "What kind of problems?" Vivian hesitated. "Briefly, intimidation threats, financial pressure." Emily stared at her in horror. "You hired criminals!" Vivian snapped defensively. "That world is far more common than you realize." "And Olivia." Vivian closed her eyes briefly as if struggling with the memory. She discovered illegal transactions connected to downtown property deals. Emily's breathing became uneven. She threatened to expose everything. "So you silenced her." Vivian looked furious immediately. "I never ordered anyone to kill her." "But someone did." Vivian's silence answered. "Enough." Emily stepped backward, shaking her head slowly. "You destroyed a family." Vivian's voice suddenly cracked with frustration. "I was trying to protect ours." Emily almost laughed from disbelief. "Our family? You never cared about family, only power." For the first time, Vivian looked genuinely hurt by her daughter's words, but Emily no longer cared. Years of emotional control, manipulation, fear. Everything finally shattered inside her. "You need to leave." Vivian stared at her in shock. "You're choosing Michael Hayes over your own mother." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "No, I'm choosing myself for the first time." Vivian's expression slowly turned cold again. "Then remember this when your perfect husband learns who you really are." She turned sharply and walked out of the mansion without another word. Emily stood frozen in the silent hallway long after the front doors closed. She could barely breathe, because deep down she knew Vivian was right about one thing. Michael would eventually learn the truth, and when he did, he might hate her too. That evening, heavy snowstorms covered Chicago streets, while powerful winds shook the mansion. Windows Michael sat alone beside the fireplace, holding a glass of whiskey, when Emily finally entered the living room. The warmth of the fire contrasted sharply against the storm outside. Michael looked up immediately. "You've been crying." Emily sat quietly across from him. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then she whispered softly, "There's something I need to tell you." Michael placed his drink down slowly. The seriousness in her voice instantly caught his attention. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she tried finding the right words. "My mother knew people connected to Olivia's accident." Michael became completely still. She admitted that not directly, but enough. The silence that followed felt unbearable. Michael stared into the fire while emotions slowly hardened across his face. "Tell me everything." So Emily did. The business deals, the threats, the hidden associates, every terrible detail. Vivian revealed when she finally finished speaking. The room remained silent. Except for the crackling fire, Michael's jaw tightened. Visibly, pain rage, grief all mixed together behind his calm expression. Finally, he spoke quietly. "My daughter lost her mother because people wanted money." Emily's eyes filled again. "I'm sorry." Michael stood suddenly and walked toward the giant windows overlooking the storm outside. For several long moments, he said nothing. Then quietly he asked the question Emily feared most. "Did you know before marrying me?" Emily immediately shook her head. "No, I swear." Michael turned toward her slowly. His eyes searched her face carefully, looking for lies, looking for betrayal. Emily forced herself not to look away. Finally, Michael exhaled deeply. "I believe you." Those 3 words nearly broke her completely because she realized something important in that moment. Michael trusted her more than Vivian ever had. Suddenly, loud thunder shook the mansion while the lights flickered briefly. Lily appeared sleepily at the top of the staircase. Frightened by the storm, "Daddy." Michael immediately softened and walked upstairs toward her. Emily watched quietly as he carried Lily back toward her bedroom, comforting her gently. The sight hurt Emily's heart in the best possible way. This man loved deeply, even after losing everything, and now Emily loved him too. Not because of his wealth, not because of revenge, but because Michael Hayes gave her something she had searched for her entire life. Safety as snow continued falling outside the mansion. Emily realized the storm surrounding their family was far from over because somewhere in Chicago, powerful people still protected the secrets behind Olivia Hayes' death, and the closer Michael moved toward the truth, the more dangerous everything would become. Snow covered Chicago like a white blanket the morning everything finally changed. Emily Carter stood beside the giant mansion windows, holding a cup of untouched coffee, while anxiety twisted inside her chest. The truth about Olivia Hayes' death was no longer hidden. Michael knew enough now to destroy Vivian Carter forever, but Emily still feared what would happen when the full investigation became public. Across the living room, television reporters already discussed new corruption accusations. Connected to powerful Chicago business figures, Vivian's name appeared across every news channel Michael entered, quietly wearing a dark suit while adjusting his watch. He looked calmer than the night before, but Emily could still see pain hiding behind his eyes. "You should eat something," he said softly. Emily shook her head. "I'm not hungry." Michael walked closer slowly. "This isn't your fault." Emily looked down immediately. "She's still my mother." Michael's expression softened slightly. "And you're nothing like her." Those words meant more to Emily than he probably realized. Before she could answer, Lily suddenly ran downstairs carrying her backpack. "Daddy, my teacher says we have to bring family photos today." Michael smiled faintly. "That sounds easy enough." Lily grinned before grabbing Emily's hand excitedly. "I picked one with all 3 of us." Emily froze for half a second. All 3 of us. The words felt warm and painful at the same time. Lily looked up innocently. "Is that okay?" Emily smiled softly while kneeling beside her. "Yeah, sweetheart, that's okay." Michael quietly watched the moment from nearby. Something emotional moved behind his eyes again. Later that afternoon, police investigators officially arrived at Vivian Carter's corporate offices. Downtown news helicopters circled above the buildings, while reporters crowded outside, inside the mansion. Emily watched everything unfold on television beside Michael. Search warrants, financial crimes, conspiracy investigations. The empire Vivian spent decades building collapsed in a single day. Emily felt sick watching it happen. Not because Vivian was innocent, but because she was still her mother. Michael noticed the conflict on her face. "You don't have to watch this." Emily swallowed slowly. "I spent my whole life trying to earn her love." Michael remained quiet, listening carefully. "She always cared more about winning than people." Emily's voice cracked slightly. "And somehow I still wanted her approval." Michael gently touched her hand. "That's what children do." Emily looked at him with tears forming again. "What if I become like her someday?" Michael answered immediately, without hesitation. You won't." The certainty in his voice surprised her. "How can you be sure? Because you feel guilt people like Vivian don't." Emily stared at him quietly. For the first time in years, someone understood her fears, without judging them. That evening, another storm covered the city. While federal investigators continued searching Vivian's offices, Michael received constant phone calls from lawyers and investigators connected to Olivia's case. Every answer uncovered something worse. Corrupt contracts, threats, illegal payments, and finally the truth they both feared most. Olivia Hayes's accident had been intentionally arranged by one of Vivian's criminal associates after Olivia threatened to expose financial crimes. Vivian herself had not physically ordered the murder, but her actions created it. When Michael ended the final phone call, his face looked completely drained. Emily sat across from him silently waiting. For several moments he said, "Nothing." Then quietly he whispered, "She died because powerful people wanted more money." Emily felt tears slide down her cheeks again. "I'm sorry, Michael." Michael closed his eyes briefly. "I spent 3 years blaming myself," Emily's chest tightened painfully. "She loved exposing corruption. I should have protected her better." Emily moved beside him immediately. "No, this was never your fault." Michael looked up at her slowly. Pain still lived inside his eyes. But something else existed there too. Now, trust love. He reached for her hand quietly. Then, for the first time since Olivia's death, Michael allowed himself to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent, painful tears from a man exhausted by grief. Emily wrapped her arms around him tightly while he buried his face against her shoulder. And in that moment she realized healing did not always happen through strength. Sometimes it happened through simply not facing pain alone anymore. The next morning, Chicago woke to shocking headlines everywhere. Vivian Carter arrested. In connection to corruption investigation, reporters surrounded the courthouse as police escorted Vivian through crowds of cameras. Emily watched silently from the back seat of Michael's car parked nearby. Her mother looked smaller somehow, not powerful anymore. Just tired, broken. Vivian suddenly noticed Emily sitting inside the vehicle. For a brief moment, their eyes met through the crowd. Years of pain passed silently between them. Then Vivian slowly walked toward the police car without another word. Emily expected relief. Instead, she felt sadness. Not for Vivian's downfall, but for the family they never truly became. Back at the mansion, Lily sat in the kitchen, coloring pictures, while soft music played nearby. The little girl looked up brightly when Emily entered. "Daddy said bad people can't hurt us anymore." Emily smiled softly. "That's true, sweetheart." Lily tilted her head curiously. "Are you staying with us forever now?" The question caught Emily off guard again. But this time, the answer felt different. Before she could speak, Michael entered the kitchen behind her. His expression looked calmer than it had in years. He walked toward them slowly. "I think that depends on Emily." Lily immediately looked hopeful. Emily laughed quietly through lingering tears. Then she looked directly at Michael. The fake marriage. The revenge. The secrets. Everything had changed. Somewhere between protecting Lily, fighting Vivian, and helping Michael survive his grief, Emily had found something real. She stepped closer to Michael slowly. "If you still want me here, I'm not going anywhere." Lily squealed happily before hugging both of them at once. Michael laughed softly while wrapping one arm around Emily and the other around Lily. For the first time since Olivia's death, the mansion truly felt warm again. Weeks later, winter slowly faded across Chicago. The scandals surrounding Vivian Carter continued. dominating headlines while Michael quietly rebuilt his life away from public attention. One evening, Michael brought Emily onto the rooftop terrace overlooking the glowing city skyline. Snowflakes drifted softly through the cold air. Chicago lights stretched endlessly around them. Michael reached into his coat pocket. Slowly, Emily looked confused until he revealed a small velvet ring box. Her breath caught instantly. Michael smiled nervously in a way she had never seen before. The first marriage happened because we needed each other. Emily's eyes filled with emotion immediately. Michael stepped closer. But somewhere along the way, you became my home. A tear slipped down Emily's cheek. Michael opened the ring box, revealing a stunning diamond ring glowing beneath the city lights. "This time, I want to marry you for real, Emily." Before she could answer, Lily suddenly burst onto the terrace wearing fuzzy pajamas. "Say yes already!" Michael laughed loudly while Emily covered, her face smiling through tears. Then Emily looked back at the man who once entered her life as part of a reckless revenge plan. The single father who secretly owned half of Chicago. The man who taught her what love actually looked like. And with her whole heart, she whispered, "Yes." As Michael kissed her beneath the snowy Chicago sky, Emily finally understood something powerful. She married a single dad to ruin her mother's plans, but instead she found the family she had needed all along.